Hello, students. Well, welcome again to the course Human Behavior in Organizations, OHRM 303. This is session 11, and in this session, we will be talking about employee motivation. Motivation. This is a term that is not new to all of us. We have been hearing of this very word almost all the time. Everybody wants to be motivated. And basically, when we talk about motivation, we are thinking about, well, money, or we are thinking about some other material gain that will push you to do something. But then we'll get to realize that motivation is not all about the physical. They are the intangibles as well. So we talk about the intrinsic motivation and also the extrinsic motivation. Let us consider a definition of motivation. We say it is a concept that describes the forces acting on an employee that initiate and direct behavior towards goals. So usually there is a need that needs to be addressed. So the employee wants to attain something, and because of what that employee wants to attain, there is a drive, or there is something that pushes the employee towards the attainment of that goal. Armstrong has defined it as the factors that influence people to behave in certain ways. Why would someone want to work in a public sector strictly? Why would someone want to work in a private sector alone? Why would someone want to, go into a certain profession and not the other? Why would someone want to stay and work in Ghana all the days of his life and would never want to step out of the country to work? Well, it is because there is something that motivates him or her. So it can be tangible or intangible, and that gives the person a certain drive and then helps him or her to attain a certain goal that he or she has in mind. Let's consider the components of motivation. There are three components when we talk about motivation. We talk about the energy, there is the direction, and then there is persistence. The energy, direction, and then persistence. With the energy, we are looking at what really drives an individual. What really drives an individual. So we say that a motivated person or a motivated individual will, exert a certain effort and then will work very hard. For instance, if we have a student who really wants to perform well in exam, the person will put in a lot of effort. If an employee wants to excel, or if an employee wants to meet a target, then that employee will put in a lot of work. So there is energy, which is one key component or an aspect of motivation. Again, we talk about direction. Now, if you don't really have anywhere you are going, or if in your mind you are not certain where you want to go, then well, any road at all can be okay for you. Now, direction. That is, why is the person putting in the effort? The person is putting in the effort because of something that he wants to achieve or something that he wants to attain. So the effort is such that, or the energy that the person puts to work is directed towards the attainment of a certain goal. So the energy is with a direction. Then we'll also talk about the other component, or the last component, which is persistence. Usually we hear of this saying that if at first you don't succeed, what do? You try again. And so there is always that persistent element. People who are very motivated are always persistent. Even when things fail, they keep pushing. They don't give up easily. I'm sure you will think of a number of people who probably started their businesses or have been trying to, work in a given organization or in a certain area. They put in their application, they are not taking, they try every means, they are not taking, but they never give up. They keep trying. That is the persistence element of motivation. And so for an individual, or for us to say that an individual is really motivated, then we talk about those three elements. That is, there is the energy or the drive. Then we also have the direction. Then we also have persistence. That is, not giving up, but keep fighting in order to achieve a goal. Approaches to motivation. Now, there are a lot of theories that we will encounter as we talk about this very important subject of motivation. Now, there is no single theory that has really addressed everything about motivation. So for motivation, there are a lot of theories. We'll talk about a few of them in this particular session. You realize that no single theory has been able to address everything. That is why someone comes up with a theory, then another person also comes up and say that, okay, yes, you have said this, but then you have not addressed this other aspect of motivation. Then this new person also has his theory. Another person also comes and tells us that, okay, you have done this, you have done that, but then there's another element. We'll go into detail and consider all those theories in the few minutes that we have. Now, we talk about the managerial approach to motivation. We will also talk about the job and organizational approach. Then we will also talk about the individual differences approach. In the managerial approach here, we are thinking about, or our concern is about how managers are able to set goals and also provide rewards for employees. So as a manager, you set a goal for an employee that this is what I want you to achieve at the end of this given period. Then if you are able to achieve this, or if you are able to meet the target, we are going to give you this reward. Probably that your salary will be increased, or we are going to give you a bonus, or we are going to, give you some days off, or that we are going to sponsor a trip that you can go with your family, and then enjoy as much as you can. So there is a goal, and then there is a reward. So that is the managerial approach. Under the managerial approach, we are going to also consider some of the theories and it in a moment. Now, the job and organizational approach. Over here, our concern is about how jobs are designed. And also we consider the work environment. Is the work environment such that the employee has the peace of mind to work? Is the work environment such that the employee is able to focus, or is he having all that he or she needs in order to perform his or her job very well? Now, the organizational context is really critical. Now, the human resource management policies and practices, they are also very key. So within the work environment, there are certain policies. Apart from the physical work environment that we see, there are certain policies that guide people's behavior. To what extent are those policies favorable? So here we can talk about some of the, let's say the leave policy, whether there is a policy for anyone to take a steady leave, whether someone has a sick leave, or it is an organization where you keep working even if you are sick, nobody cares. So that organizational context is also very key as we talk about motivation. And then we talk about the individual differences approach. Over and over again, we've said that people are different in organizations. No two individuals are the same, even if they are twins, even if they are, born on the same day. That is, whether they are fraternal twins or whether they are identical twins, there is still some difference. So this approach treats motivation as a characteristic of the individual, or as a function of the individual. Each individual has a unique taste. Each individual has something very new, to bring on board. So how can management be able to harness all these in order to get employees motivated in the organization? So using the goals and rewards to improve performance, we are talking about the managerial approach. So in setting goals for employees, the point is that we want to set goals that are specific, not goals that are vague. Goals that are very clear, that each employee understands exactly what is required of him or her. And the goal must be challenging enough. The goal being challenging does not necessarily mean that the goal is difficult. It being challenging means that it is within the strength of the employee And so you are just being stretched a little so that you are able to use all the energy you have, all the talent and skills that you have to be able to get work done. So it should be very specific. It should also be challenging. And that employees should be willing to accept and then commit themselves to the goal that has been set. Imagine there is a goal that has been set, the employee is just not happy about it. Now, when the employee is not happy about it, expresses his opinion, and management says that, well, we don't care, that's what we want you to do, just go ahead and do it, then the commitment is really not there. Now, they can accept such goals, and then management can also decide to give them the very challenging goals because they know that the employees have the right competencies in order to get the goals achieved. And usually there is progress. We get to the feedback. We get to know whether the employee is progressing in the goal that has been set or not. We have to offer incentives and rewards. That is the other aspect of the managerial approach. We've talked about the setting of goals, and then after setting of goals, when the employees are able to achieve it, then there are certain incentives and rewards that are offered. So over here, we talk about the reinforcement theory, which basic principle states that behavior that is followed by pleasant consequences are more likely to be repeated, but then those that are followed by unpleasant consequences are less likely to be repeated. This is the principle of the reinforcement theory. And over here, we can talk about the positive consequences, that is the rewards, and then the negative consequences, usually we refer to them as the punishment. So the goal is set. If the employee is able to achieve those goals, then there is the positive consequence, that is the reward. Now, when the reward is given, then the employee feels that, okay, because I was able to work very well, I was given a reward. Therefore, next time I'll also work very hard in order to get additional rewards. And then if the employee deviates or is not able to meet his or her target, then, well, certain benefits may not be given to that employee again. So that is what we refer to as the punishment. So a manager who wants to change an employee's behavior must change the specific consequences of the behavior. What this means is that you have to change the sort of rewards that you give to the employee. And so if you are able to give the employee rewards that they really cherish, that they really like, then they will also change their behavior. They will also put in a lot of work. They will also work hard when the goals are achieved so that they are able to really attain the reward that you have set for them. Now we'll continue to look at the job content and then the organizational context of motivation. And under this, we'll look at the Herzberg's two-factor theory of motivation and then Adams' equity theory of motivation. That is Frederick Herzberg and then John Stacey Adams. We'll look at their theories of motivation. For Herzberg, he talks about we are looking at the two-factor. And the two factors here, we talk about the motivator factors and then the hygiene factors. For motivator factors, basically, we are looking at the intrinsic form of motivation. Now, according to him, it is the motivator factors that make employees satisfied on the job. But then for the hygiene factors, he is looking at, or he gave examples of the external or the extrinsic forms of motivation. And to him, the hygiene factors are just needed to be present so that employees will just to avoid the dissatisfaction. But then this does not necessarily mean that when the hygiene factors are present, employees will be satisfied. He only says that they are just there to avoid dissatisfaction. So it is the motivator factors that make employees satisfied. The hygiene factors are just there to avoid dissatisfaction, but does not necessarily mean that employees will be satisfied by giving them the hygiene factors or they being, given all that they require under the hygiene factors. And then we look at the equity theory of motivation. Note that equity and equality are not the same. When we talk about equity, we are looking at proportionality. For example, If Kofi is 3 years old, Kwesi is 6 years old. Kwesi is twice the age, of the younger boy. Now, if the one who is 3 years old is eating 1 bowl of kenke, then we can assume that the older one will eat 2 because he is twice the age of the younger one. So that is being proportional, or that is equity. But when we talk about equality, if one is getting 2, then the other is also getting 2, irrespective of their age. So with the equity theory, it says that motivation levels can be enhanced or diminished by employees' judgment about whether the organization is treating them fairly. So the judgment of the employee, or the perceptions of the employees about whether the organization is really being fair to them or not. So it is not an issue of really of being realistic, but it's an issue of what the individual himself thinks or feels that the organization is doing to them. Now over here, employees consider 2 things: their inputs and then their outcomes. If I put in this level of effort, then I expect this outcome. But then if the individual puts in a certain, or commits himself in a certain way, and then the outcome he thinks is not proportional to the input, then you feel that, well, I've been cheated. There has been no equity. And when it happens that way, the employee feels that he or she has not been treated fairly. Now, again, looking at the equity theory of motivation, let's look at this very practical example. There are 2 employees in the organization. One person comes to work at 8 o'clock and then closes at 5 p.m. At the end of the month, he is receiving 2,000 Ghana cedis. Another person, also in the same department with the same qualification, everything, comes to work at 10 o'clock and leaves at 3 o'clock. Just decides to come to work late and then leave early. At the end of the month, is also receiving the same amount as salary. Now, the one who is always coming to work very early and then closing at the right time will feel that the company is cheating him or her because I am putting in more effort. So my input and outcome is not proportionate to the input and outcome of the other person. Therefore, there is no equity. So when it happens that way, the individual feels that, hey, I'm not being treated very well. So that is the very basic of the equity theory. Then individual differences in motivation. Over here, we will consider Maslow's hierarchy of needs theory, which I believe you are quite familiar with. And then we talk about Alderfer's ERG theory. Okay, so for Maslow's hierarchy of needs theory, we talk about the physiological needs, the safety, security needs, the social affiliation needs, the esteem needs, and then the self-actualization needs. According to Maslow, that's Abraham Maslow, the needs are arranged in a hierarchical order. And because of that, the individual must satisfy one before moving to the other. So if you're not able to satisfy, for instance, the physiological needs, then there is no point moving towards the attainment of a safety or security need. He says it is in a hierarchical order. Now, usually when we see the various needs under the very first one, physiological, that is the need for food, drink, shelter, and then sexual satisfaction. At times, students get a bit surprised why we have sexual satisfaction under physiological needs. Let me explain it. Now, the physiological needs are there, or they are required for the individual's survival. It is required for the survival of the individual. So now, the sexual satisfaction is there in order for the human race to be perpetuated. That is for the survival of the human race. So it doesn't therefore mean that okay, Abraham Maslow says a physiological need is very basic. Therefore, I have to go around, satisfying that desire. No, it has to be done within the right context. So get it right. It is for the survival or to perpetuate the human species. Then he moves ahead, talks about the other needs. And at the very top is the self-actualization need. That is where, when the individual then becomes what he or she is capable of becoming. According to Maslow, only few people are able to get there. At the most, people get to their esteem needs. At least they're able to get the self-respect, the autonomy, where they, decide for themselves whatever they want to do, that they are able to have recognition and attention in society. But then, for the self-actualization, it's only a few who are able to attain that level of need. Then we talk about Clayton Alderfer's ERG theory. The ERG here referred to the existence needs, the relatedness needs, and then the growth needs. His theory is also related to that of Maslow, but he says that it is not in a hierarchical way. In fact, he critiqued Maslow's work for saying that individuals or human beings are not such that they always have to follow the same order. And so he says that, okay, we have the existence needs, the relatedness needs, and then the growth needs, but then they do not follow a particular order. The existence needs, he talked about, food, water, shelter. So his needs are related to Maslow's first two needs. Then the relatedness needs relates to Maslow's social and then affiliation needs. That is the third need. Then the esteem needs and then the self-actualization needs are what Alderfer has referred to as the growth needs. That's the desires to be creative, to make useful and positive contribution to society. We have gone through what motivation is. We have considered the managerial approach. We have also looked at the organizational context approach to motivation, and then the individual differences to motivation. And under these, we considered some theories of motivation. I encourage you to read more on these theories and to see more examples in the books that you have been asked to go and read. So in the session activity, explain what Maslow and then Alderfer have talked about in terms of their motivation theories. Again, in a practical sense, what strategies should managers implement to ensure that employees give their best in pursuing the vision and mission of their organizations? As you do this, I wish you the very best. Take good care. Bye-bye.